Hello again, everybody. I have a special game for you here today. My first ever ranked Advanced Wars by Web match on the Global League. The Global League is apparently Advanced Wars by Web's ranked competitive multiplayer mode. I thought that, having won my first 5 Advanced Wars by Web games, I'm probably an advanced beginner, so I'll give it my best shot, and I welcome any tips from more experienced players. I was disheartened to be paired with this opponent, Trix 1117, who had played more than 1,000 games, including more than 200 on the Global League. So that was not a great start there. But I thought long and hard about my CO choice for this confusing looking map that I saw I was going to be on, and I thought that out of all the high tier COs, Sasha or Hawk would probably be my picks. They were the most straightforward ones, and I thought, Sasha would have an easy time beating some of the COs who I'm afraid of, including Hawk, Eagle, Olaf, a couple others who have good win rates on this map. The only CO I feel like she would fail hard against would be Sturm. So I think I'll go with Sasha and hope my opponent doesn't pick Sturm. Well, my opponent picked Sturm. Sasha apparently in Fog has about a 40% win rate against Sturm, like a little bit under 40%, so this is really not off to a rosy start here. But I gave this my all and thought of all the best tactics I could come up with to approach the mission here. Taking a look at this map, you can see it's a kind of weird one. We've got several pre-deployed units. We each have a pre-deployed lander on one of our 2 HQs. If either HQ gets captured, you lose. You need to guard 2 HQs. The lander can guard one, or can take it off of the HQ permanently and put it onto that pond where it can help ferry your units around and speed them up getting around the map. I think either can be viable, depending on what your goals are. We also have a lander on these western and eastern strips of ocean. They can go up and down the coast, dropping units off in this isolated base onto the mainland area. And we also have a black boat, which is a dual-strike exclusive transport unit. The black boat is standing on, of all things, a second airport near the enemy base. It just kind of serves to block them until they can destroy it with an artillery or something like that. And we also have what I think is the best feature of this map, a recon. It's guarding a comm tower on a tiny island, but more importantly, it's near the enemy bases. Depending on how you position it, you can monitor several of the enemy's production buildings with this recon. The upshot is that this Fog of War map is a lot less about guesswork than most maps are. You can see most of what the enemy is building, only this isolated base is entirely secret. But you have to make a choice about what you watch. Or do you? If you know me, you know that I dislike luck and guesswork in my strategy game, so I'm happy about this. In any case, I should talk about her COs. I am playing as Sasha. I picked her partly because I'm inexperienced and she's fairly straightforward day to day. Her day to day is getting 1,100 income rather than 1,000 per property. That's a pretty powerful bonus. Her CO power is very unique and interesting. It's very cheap. It doesn't give her any bonuses besides the generic 10% attack and defense everybody gets all the time for CO powers. What it does is deplete the enemy CO bar by 10% of their maximum per 5,000 funds you have at the time that you activate it. So Sasha's thing basically is that nobody gets to have good CO powers during games with her, and then she gets to use her strong day-to-day to slowly beat the opponent down. That approach could absolutely crush some of the superpower-focused COs I was afraid of going into this match. However, my opponent's CO, Sturm, is very formidable. Although he's weaker than his Advanced Wars 2 incarnation, he's still in broken tier in Advanced Wars by Web most of the time. Not surprisingly, the statistics that I found show that he has a crushing win rate advantage against Sasha. The biggest and craziest advantage he has is that day-to-day, his units ignore terrain movement penalties. His infantry can run full speed over mountains and rivers, so this gives him an economic advantage over just about any other CO by letting him capture things more efficiently. His recons are in a completely different league from anybody else's. They move about 2 or 3 times as fast by ignoring terrain penalties. So nobody can compete with his unique and powerful recon harassment. So that gives him another economic advantage. And hey, all his other units are also faster than everybody else's. As if that wasn't enough, he also has plus 20% defense with all of his units. Defense is way more important than offense in this game, so this is not compensated for by his 20% attack penalty. For one thing, terrain bonuses stack additively with his defense bonus, whereas his attack penalty is only multiplicative with me having terrain bonuses, so he has a major advantage when terrain is involved. For that reason, I really want to grab the map's good terrain before he gets there, especially these cities and missile silo in the middle. If he gets hold of them, dislodging him could be impossible, and Sturm's CO power and superpower could be an instant win button if the opponent doesn't play around them properly. Fortunately, they're very expensive. If I use my CO power well, he'll never get his. So, the strategy that I devised for this map has 3 components. Number 1, use this recon to get a lot of intelligence, while keeping things secret from him on my side. Number 2, get an economic advantage. Having extra properties is 10% more valuable to Sasha than to other COs. So, while delay building my first vehicles, except insofar as I must build tanks to counter any recon harassment. And goal 3, the hardest one, is to grab and occupy as much of the valuable defensive terrain as possible. I don't need to capture all of it necessarily. Just don't let him build walls on it that I can't get through. Alright, let's see if this strategy survives contact with the enemy. Interestingly, as player 2, my lander is more usefully positioned than his is. I plan to use that edge to get more people onto the mainland faster than he can, to capture more of those important defensive terrain cities that I mentioned. Notice, by the way, that the extra HQ means extra income faster and therefore possibly earlier vehicles than on most maps. I won't do that, of course, because delaying infantry would damage my economy. I chose to forego having my lander drop somebody off onto the mainland this turn, so that next turn I can get 2 people landed onto it, and so I can drop some of them deeper in toward those defensive cities that I mentioned. He, as player 1, is sort of forced to go for that nearby airport first instead. Now over here on this left side, he gets under his lander first. Drifts off at the port, conventional stuff. Then, something odd happens here. His infantry actually walked into my black boat and got ambushed. That doesn't actually slow him down though, because he's Sturm. So I don't think this was necessarily an accident. Might have been a deliberate route choice. But he's going for an early artillery, which is interesting. So that of course can help him beat down my black boat faster. But it also means he did not spend that money building a super early recon. Speaking of recons, I'm going to do something clever with my island one. I haven't seen anybody else think of this in replays that I've watched. Every turn I walk it back and forth. This means I can actually watch both of his bases and his airport and see everything he produces from all 3 of those things, rather than just having to pick 2 to monitor. As you'll see, this gives me a crucial intelligence advantage. Okay, so I let up 2 guys onto the lander, and drop them off. Continue capturing, and I just build infantry, because I know he didn't build a recon yet, so I don't need to worry yet. Okay. So he's going to get his second airport without artillery much faster than I will on my side. It will not fit my strategy to sink 6,000 funds into a unit that won't do anything but shoot at the black boat for potentially 4 turns because he's Sturm. Especially because the second airport won't really have any benefit to me for a long time. I'd rather build infantry to capture and tanks to protect them and grab important territory. It's worth noting again, by the way, that as Sturm he's guaranteed to kill my black boat in 3 shots with his artillery, but I have a coin flip chance of taking 4 turns instead if I try it. Likewise, he'll be a lot faster when it comes time to kill my island recon. Speaking of that recon, the first thing I do on most turns is move it and see what else he built. In this case, he only built infantry here. Now I calculated out how much money he could have at this point. He could have built a recon from that southern base. I had better assume that he did that and make the counterplay. Before I build anything though, I'll just do my captures for the turn. I think the capture route I went for here is one of the best ones available. Late on the airport, but I think that's okay. I have access to a great capture chain up here in the north potentially, way before he can get there. He can fight me for it eventually when he clears out his black boat, and then this becomes kind of a strong side for him, but I've got the territory while it was easy to get at least. So, I have to build myself a tank, because if he built a recon this turn, next turn he can drop it off here. Because he's Sturm, he can go full speed through this reef, unlike me. He can go in 1 turn from here to dropping off over there. For me it takes 2 turns, because of the reef in the way. Or he could drop it off over here, or something like that. In any case, he could drop it off there next turn, and then he can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and he'd already be seeing several infantry and dropping them the turn after that. So if I don't have a tank this turn, I will not be in time to interrupt him. He'll get 3 hits on my infantry. Okay, so I just build more infantry myself elsewhere. So on his turn, he actually goes for very conservative drops with his lander, sticking with the easy, safe, close-to-home money. In general, I think my opponent played much more defensively than I did. That does make some sense for Sturm, the defensive CO, but it's always my style to be aggressive and grab important parts of the map while I can. Well, because he's Sturm, he can do a unique capture route directly from that base to the city across the river. Sturm has several very good special capture routes only he can do on this map, an important economic edge that I'm going to have to overcome somehow. Anyway, I see that he builds a tank, and that means that he did not actually build a recon last turn. He could not have afforded both of them, and I know that. So, false alarm, my tank doesn't need to ward off a recon for now. It can do other things instead. Okay. Well, I'm going to capture, start a whole bunch more captures this turn, drive my lander slowly back. I get started capturing the airport, which feels kind of late, but I couldn't have deployed any battlecopters anyway, so I think the delay was pretty well worth it. It let me get a better position on the mainland instead. Well, because my tank doesn't need to be warding off recons, I can instead deploy it near the middle to secure those important cities that I talked about earlier. I can use the lander to get the tank into the middle faster than is usually possible. One other reason, by the way, I did not go for an artillery myself is I thought of a special maneuver that Sturm and only Sturm could do to actually rush and wreck an early artillery. I'll show a diagram rather than talking about it because it's fairly complicated. Anyway, because I know that he does not have any recons, I will now build my first artillery. Okay, well, he's getting several captures here. He does choose eventually to move this infantry, I guess not toward that nearby city, but down there toward those cities instead. So I feel like his capture route was not as efficient as it could have been, really. It wasn't the worst case scenario I was envisioning. Anyway, I think he has his own plans to grab hold of the middle, so we'll drive his tank full speed southward right through that forest that slows me down. I think it's worth noting that one thing Sturm can do and nobody else can do is in 2 turns he can get from that base to attacking into the 3 central properties. It will take me 3 turns. I can get in 2 turns to about here, but I can't attack anything, because I'm blocked by this wood. I'm going to clear with this black boat. I have a fast route that takes me 2 turns to get to here, but I'll still never be fast to get into this spot, or this missile silo. So just Sturm key advantages that he's got and nobody else has. Kind of an uphill battle to control the center against him, which is why it's important to get there fast. Okay. He did build this first recon, but he built it where I can see it, which is interesting and probably not optimal. If he surprised me with it, it would have been nastier. But in any case, I walk back and forth, just continue to scout whatever he's doing. I do a lot of captures this time, so now I have a decent amount of income, especially because I'm Sasha. His capture route has really not been as efficient as it could have been for Sturm, and because of that, and because I'm player 2, I now have more buildings than he has. Let me know, by the way, if there's a better capture route that I could have taken. I'm no expert on this. Anyway, I moved my artillery to get started on this black boat. Now I had been rethinking this turn what to do with my lander exactly. I decided to not use the lander to drop the tank off into the middle, but to instead position it where it can help an infantry get there next turn. I think I have a chance to capture something. If his tank is moving directly westward or southward, he won't necessarily see that, and I can get away with getting an easy capture there. That would be really useful for walling him out of the middle. I'm also going to build myself another tank in the south. This is both because I want to have tank superiority over him, and also because if my artillery gets a bad luck roll against the black boat, I need a tank to finish it off in 3 turns. Possibly though, I should have built the tank from the isolated base instead to drop it off onto the mainland. That would have been better with lander timings, I think. Okay, I end my turn. So on his turn, he's able to catch up most of my lead, getting a bunch of good captures this turn. He finishes off that black boat, but he messed up here. If he had taken this infantry and run it westward onto the mountains to scout, that would have given him the vision needed to finish off the black boat. Then the infantry from the base could have captured the airport this turn. He didn't do that though, he had to scout for it in the wrong way and slow himself down a little bit. I didn't know that, of course, at the time. Okay. Again, we'll see here that with his lander drops, he's playing very defensively and just capturing everything on his side of the map before moving toward the contested properties. Rather different from my approach. So he just kind of continues to drop off troops at the nearby cities. I guess moving his lander for similar reasons to me. And builds his first battle copter. Now, when I saw him build 2 infantry, I thought for sure he's probably built himself a battle copter. I'll just check for that later on this turn. Now, I also thought one other thing, which is that I know when he built this tank, and I know it went southward. So the most likely dangerous place he could be this turn basically is in that forest. He could have gotten there and hidden away. I couldn't do the same thing on my side because he's Sturm and I'm not. So in that case, if he's in that forest, what I want to do is probably lure him out with his infantry on that lander as bait. For that to work, I need him not to see me. So do this little U-turn move there where I just go whoop, out of his vision range, claim that city, without his tank knowing that I'm there. Even if he does somehow scout and attack me, with me having the terrain bonus, he's not going to come out ahead. And if he doesn't scout me and takes the bait, I can get a good first hit on him with my tank with me having the city advantage. That would be pretty decisive. So as you can see, I successfully predicted his moves, partly by using my recon better. Anyway, I take my first shot against the black boat, and the luck roll goes my way. It was a coin flip basically, reducing him to either 7 or 8 HP. So now I am guaranteed to kill him in 3 hits, because of the way your HP affects how much benefit you gain from terrain defense. Terrain defense scales down proportionally with your displayed HP. Thus, getting a good first shot makes your second shot better, and that makes your third shot be a guaranteed kill. Okay, well, I capture, load onto that lander, and drop off over there into that property. So I have laid claim to 2 of the 3 good terrain spots in the middle, which is kind of the main part of my strategy at this point. I want to claim the good terrain here. I don't expect necessarily to capture the cities. If I can, that's great. But just holding them with units is worth a lot too, just so he can't have it and I have the good bonuses and he doesn't. And he has to fight uphill instead of me. Okay. Drop off more guys into the mainland. Now I build my first recon. I had a plan in mind and a backup plan. Notice that this turn I have enough money that I could also build a battle copter if I wanted to. The best way for me to take out his recon efficiently is to catch him on that shoal. If I spotted him on the shoal right now, I would build a battlecopter and then hope to swoop it in next turn and block him off, getting onto the comm tower myself and shooting him while he's on the defenseless terrain. However, I can see that he is not on the shoal, and therefore he must be on the comm tower, so that battlecopter will not work very efficiently against him. When he gets that terrain bonus, a battlecopter would take forever to kill him. So I go with plan B, which is to build an artillery instead. I think this plan was the best one available to me for taking out his recon. Plan A would have been great, but plan B still works pretty efficiently. Now I'm going to get a tank, but because my lander is too far away from the isolated base, I can't drop it off onto the mainland as fast as I would like to. It's going to have to go the long way around instead. So, his turn. You'll see him move his artillery kind of westward rather than due southward as I would have expected. He doesn't really seem to have prioritized getting to the center as much as I did. Going for the northwest makes some sense too, of course. There are plenty of valuable properties there. But just later on he really consolidates his forces in the center, and the artillery is kind of slow to arrive because of this initial delay. So I'm not sure what he had in mind for this time. Okay, so there he sees that I have this city already. And I think that caught him off guard. So now he redirects his recon. It had been going south, now he sends it westward instead to find out what's going on, I think. So my aggressive capture route caught him off guard here and probably flustered him a little bit. He will of course be able to take that city back from me, which is not good for me. Which is one more reason that maybe I should have gotten a tank out there faster with that lander. Not sure. Now I'm expecting his battlecopters I knew he'd be building to come up and attack my recon. Possibly that was his original plan too. But here, his tank takes the bait. He walks up and shoots the infantry, which now reveals my tank to him but leaves him exposed to it. So, whether or not he realizes that it was a trap, he realizes that he's in trouble and redirects his battlecopter to come reinforce the middle. That means my recon gets to live another few turns, and I get to gather more intelligence. Here, I was surprised to see him build this mech. Although the existence of landers can help the slow mechs get around, I still don't really feel like this is a map that favors them very much. There aren't a lot of mountains or heavy terrain near the middle that they can use. And of course I have the recon, so I know it's coming, so it will not be a surprise to me. And you know, I might argue that Sturm gets relatively little benefit from mechs and air units, because one of the reasons to build those things is to navigate difficult terrain. But all of Sturm's units are already really good at that. No surprise that he built another tank, by the way. He needs to replace the one that's going to take all that damage. Okay, so I continue to do the captures. Shell is black vote. I decide to drop off over here and go for this mountain city. Because Sturm infantry can move over mountains at full speed, he's very good at taking these corner cities later on. But if I keep an infantry there to guard it, I can maybe hold it all game. So I'm going to claim it now while the getting is good before he gets over here. I see he built a tank, which is important news. I know that I have 3 tanks, he has 2 tanks, and a battlecopter. I'm a little bit off guard about his battlecopter, because I'd expected it to go and attack the recon, but instead it's rushing toward the middle. I need an answer to that, and fast. No matter what I do though, battlecopter will have at least 1 turn of free reign in the middle. So, my artillery will have to start shooting at his recon, and my tank gets to slam him with a first strike. I could have had better luck. I could have been reduced to only 9 HP instead of 8, but it's still a great first engagement, and I know for sure that it's a free hit. Because with recon movement plus math, I know exactly what he can have and where it can be. In contrast, because his recon's been on that comm tower, he does not know what I've been building from most of my bases. As I mentioned, intel gathering with that recon is a big part of my strategy. I put my tank in a versatile position here. He can reinforce the center, he can interrupt captures over there in the southeast, he can protect my infantry, but he is still backing up this tank if he does stay to slug it out. Okay, advance a lot of infantry, tank has to go the long way around. My recon is much slower than Sturm's recon, but I'm going to need the vision. So I'm going to make a crucial and unusual and maybe not wise choice here. I'm going to try to explain my reasoning. I build 2 anti-airs. Normally, I'd rather counter battlecopters with battlecopters and not anti-airs. With most COs, a battlecopter versus battlecopter first strike is devastating. But against Sturm and his defense bonuses, that first strike is much less decisive. On the other hand, my anti-aircraft gun's still guaranteed instant kill even though he's Sturm. I also would have no element of surprise with the battlecopter because he can see the airport. But of course, you could still reasonably ask, why didn't I build an anti-air and a tank? And I did strongly consider that, but there were a few reasons I went for 2 anti-aircraft guns instead. Number 1, I already have a pretty good tank lead right now, 2.8 to 1.6. So he doesn't have much that can threaten my anti-airs, and I'm already winning the tank fight so far. Number 2, I know that Sturm's infantry walls will be almost impervious to me if I just have tanks. If he's got an infantry on a plane, I can't guaranteed kill that with a tank plus an infantry. So if all I have are tanks and infantry, he can really easily wall me out with a few artillery behind his infantry. In the case of an artillery walled for by infantry, if I have tank infantry, I'm helpless. But if I have infantry anti-aircraft tank, I can actually wall break him and have the tank drive through and shoot his artillery. Lastly, in the long term, I'll want several anti-aircraft guns for this mission regardless. There are 2 airports, the map is large, and there's a lot of income on it. There will be planes coming out, and 1 AA gun will not be enough to cover much of the map against them. There are lots of fronts, and I'll want AA guns on several of them, if not all of them. A bomb or a bunch of battlecopters going uncountered later on could be pretty devastating. And you know, even this turn, his B-copter could go in several directions. I don't want to be chasing after it and failing to catch up while it gets numerous free hits. Even considering all of that, I did still strongly consider going for anti-aircraft gun plus tank rather than double AAs. I'd be glad to hear from more experienced players about what they think about that reasoning, and whether they would have gone AA tank or done what I did here. So, Trix reveals his battlecopter for me for some reason. Several of my opponents really have had something of an exhibitionist streak. They don't seem to believe in leaving anything to the imagination. I try to keep my own formations a little bit more mysterious. I think he was too aggressive with that infantry too. It's isolated in my territory. There's no way it's getting out of there. His recon, on the other hand, was pretty cautious this turn, and I think that was a pretty good idea. You know, if he attacked me hypothetically, he's not interrupting a capture. I already have the city. So all he would do is reduce me to about 6 HP, so that's about 400 worth of damages there. That's really not that much. I would immediately heal up 2 of it, so I'd be almost ready to go capture things again. And also, it's not just possible, but probable that I have a tank in this wood or somewhere else nearby already. Very easy to have that by now. So in that case, he would do 400 worth of damage, and then he would take, let's see. Let's check it in the damage calculator. So, attacker is one of my tanks, defender is his recon, let's say he's on a plane for this probably. Yeah, he would take massive damage, so it's not at all a good trade if I have a tank there, which, as I said, is quite probable. So I think he made the right risk versus reward analysis and decided it was not worth attacking at this time. Now, of course, as it turns out, I don't have a tank there, but that doesn't make his choice a bad one. It was a good choice, it just didn't work out this time. So when I saw his tank drive east out of sight here, I figured he was going out to this city to heal up and get some repairs done. I had no way to know he had just got that city, so luckily for me he's not actually healing it up. Unless the cost prevents you from buying something important, repairs are quite good. It's like having an extra 1/5 of a base. Looking at the map now, I can see that on the northwest for me and the southwest for him, we both have a lot of infantry with no real vehicle support. We're both concentrating vehicles near the center now. Now here, he built double tanks, and I was not happy to see that, because after all I have anti-airs, now he has tanks that can wreck those anti-airs. Now he has 3.6 tanks to my 2.8, and as far as I knew he was getting repairs too. So luckily of course his tanks won't reach the front for a little while, but I know that once they do, I'm at a disadvantage. And I can't really capitalize on this period where I have, local temporary tank superiority, because he still has this battlecopter here, and I don't have a counter to it in place yet. I'm about to make a mistake too, so militarily I'm in kind of a bad spot right now, but economically I'm doing pretty well at least. I'm able to take out his black boat, so now this path is clear for me finally. I have to build a recon over there so I can just see his recon and shoot at it, but I do that. I build a B-copter this turn because if I attack with it along with the artillery next turn, I'll be able to finish him off immediately and then redirect both units back toward the center pretty efficiently. The artillery alone will take several turns. Thus, there's kind of a trade-off about whether I want to get the battlecopter or the artillery to the middle faster. This whole dilemma, of course, only exists because I'm playing Sasha versus Stern. With any other matchup, killing the recon would be pretty trivial. Okay. So my lander's going back to be able to pick up more things. I do more lander drops over here of infantry and tanks. I go for the island city, happy to get it. This infantry is, as you can see, terribly exposed, and I know I can easily cover the recon here with my anti-aircraft gun, so I'm getting a free hit. I'm also really glad to know exactly where his battlecopter is. The B-copter's accounted for, and therefore know my tank can drive southeast and attack the infantry with impunity. But now I make a big mistake. My anti-air covers a lot of troops, and it's pretty easy to have everybody covered by him. But I miscounted and moved my tank into a bad spot. I miscounted, I thought this tank was covered. It is not covered. So now he can get a free hit on my tank with his battlecopter, which could be pretty bad when he outnumbers my tanks. I realized the mistake immediately and realized how important it could be, but I don't really have any way to rectify it this turn. So, after this terrifying misstep, I started learning how to use the move planner. Much better to make a mistake there and have a chance of catching it than to make it here and have no way to do a take back. In any case, having put one guy in range, I figure I might as well put 2 guys in range. I don't want him grabbing hold of that city, so I'll put a tank on it. Furthermore, this kind of functions as a bluff. He doesn't know when I built my AA gun. If I act confident, he might think I'm covered. Again though, if he'd done with his recon what I did with mine, and wobbled it back and forth every turn, he would know that my AA gun could not cover that tank. An intel lead might be even more important than an income lead in Fog of War. So, he has to make a pretty tough choice now. Is he willing to risk an entire battlecopter to take out half a tank? Not an easy choice necessarily. Because my recon is still alive and was watching to see which way both of his tanks go. Good intel there. His guy in the comm tower has really missed a lot of key intel. Okay. So, his injured infantry must retreat there, and his B-copter backs off. He must have assumed that it was bait. Doesn't attack my tank. I guess he got tricked once already. He probably doesn't want that to happen again. So he chooses to play it safe, which makes some sense. But it's good for me in this case, because I had made a mistake and he did not punish it. And now I do have time to bring my AAs into position. He is capturing a city over there, which is really bad for me, because, that's going to be not just plus 1,000 money for him, but minus 1,000 for me. Not sure it's worth it for me to capture it in the first place, but it was a decent capture route, and it was possibly going to take a little longer to get to it, so, yeah. So I've been wondering at this point where his artillery is. I know it's not in the forest, which is where I probably would have been trying to put it. And then he told me. He moved the infantry back out of the woods. When I saw that, I thought, oh, okay. In that case, I do know where the artillery is. It's probably right there. That's just about the only reason to pull the infantry back out of the forest, so I can infer that the artillery is being walled for. So, he revealed this indirectly. I think that's a good cautionary tale. So as usual, one of the first things I do on my new turn is move my recon. And I was very surprised to see that battlecopter. As I'd mentioned, I'd been calculating out how much money Sturm could have each turn with the best capture route which I could envision for him. And I knew it was not possible for him to afford all of this stuff, plus an infantry from the southern base, plus repairs on his tank. So from this I was able to infer that he had actually not been repairing his tank. Unbeknownst to me, he also didn't build an infantry because he ran out of money, because he wasn't quite as efficient as the capture route I was thinking of. Okay, so I get a lot of captures this turn, so that's good. And I must decide whether to have the battlecopter finish off the recon, and also whether to have my infantry up north interrupt his capture of my city or finish the capture of the neutral one. I decide I must get the battlecopter into the center faster, because he has about 4 tanks there. I'm at risk of getting overrun and losing control of those central cities, which are key to the third point of my strategy. By building a T-copter now, I can grab the comm tower as fast as possible. For those who don't know, comm towers give a 10% attack bonus to the player who holds them. Proportionally, this is a little bit better for Sturm than it is for me, because it takes him from 80% to 90% versus me from 100% to 110%. So in the middle, I move up my recon to do some scouting, and then realize I might have a chance here to build up a wall of infantry on all of these good terrain tiles. If I can do that and hold it, I can start putting him in a series of no-win situations. So, after figuring out exactly where his battlecopter is, I know where I can get free hits and where I can't. And everything in range of his battlecopter is now protected by my anti-aircraft gun. If he attacks one of these tanks, he will just lose his battlecopter, so it's a terrible deal for him. And I want him to do that, so I hide the anti-aircraft gun in the woods where he can't possibly scout it in time. And I go for the middle captures. Now, I'm not expecting to get these properties. What I'm expecting is to force him into a series of bad traits where he has to fight against me when I have good terrain. If he attacks this city from the shoal side, then I can hit him with this tank. If he attacks infantry, against my guys on the cities, he will not do well in those trades, and then I can bring up more reinforcements and just shred him on my turn. If he uses vehicles to hit my guys on the cities, I'll bring up my own vehicles and first strike him, with me having terrain bonuses again. He could probably still make it work this turn, but it would be tricky to come out ahead for him. At least until he's able to bring up more of his tanks in future turns. And by that time, I can have even better defenses in place. And hey, who knows, maybe I will get one of the cities, it's possible. I do wish that I could have gotten artillery to the center a little bit faster. But I'm not Sturm and I'm playing against Sturm, so it really was not very easy to do that. Also notice, by the way, that I built my first MD tank over in the west. I think it's an unusual choice to do that so early, even for Sasha, who can afford it faster than most other COs can. Here's my reasoning for why I got this early MD tank. Number 1, I want some kind of vehicle in the northwest front to protect my infantry, who are isolated currently. It's not easy to get many vehicles there fast, so I choose to go for one quality one rather than several small ones. Furthermore, I know that he has a very large number of tanks, and a lot of them are concentrated either in the middle or moving toward that northwestern area. MD tanks counter clusters of tanks quite well. He also doesn't have many MD tank counters, one artillery which is accounted for, and one newly built one which won't arrive for a long time. He could also counter them slowly with battlecopters, but I already have a good number of anti-aircraft guns, so that's not really a worry for me. You could still make an argument that I should have made battlecopters and tanks instead of an MD tank, but I couldn't do a battlecopter this turn anyway because I needed to use that airport to build a T-copter. And he could counter those relatively cheaply and easily anyway by just building a single anti-aircraft gun or using his battlecopters that he already has. Another consideration, like before, is that I can wall break him with MD tanks plus some other kind of vehicle attacking his vehicles. I can't do that with 2 battlecopters or 2 tanks. In any case, that's my reasoning, but it is still a questionable decision, I know. Okay, so it's his turn, and he now needs to decide what to do about all of these cities that I'm capturing and properties that I'm occupying in the middle. If he attacks, he'll get non-cost-effective engagements when I know that I'm ahead of him on money because I'm Sasha and I've done a better job capturing than he has done. So, he's kind of in the first of a series of no-win scenarios that I've been trying to put him into. He probably could still come out ahead if he just attacked all out this turn. I don't really have enough vehicles in position yet to punish him if he does so, but he doesn't know that, so he has to choose whether he thinks it's worth the risk or not. I saw his infantry walking toward that southern island city, so that means he does not have it yet, and to know when he's going to get it, that's good information to have. Unfortunately, he's going to go all in for my recon this turn, so it won't survive much longer, which is a shame because it's been my single most valuable asset. From here on out, I won't have any kind of intelligence advantage in what he's building. Well, it was nice while it lasted, and I think I got a lot of good use out of it. I do get to see that he's building another battlecopter, which is a good bit of intelligence for me to have. He now has 3 of those things. That's good for me though, because I have plenty of anti-airs waiting. I also just don't think that battlecopters are that good for Sturm. If you think about it, the defense bonus is mostly irrelevant for them, because most things that can attack battlecopters either do almost no damage to begin with, or still instant kill them. The only matchup it really matters in is B-copter versus B-copter. But of course, the attack penalty hurts them against every possible target, so that is really a big penalty. And then, flying movement is normally pretty good, but a lot of Sturm's units kind of act like semi-flying units already. Some B-copters are still great, I'm sure, but I'm not convinced Sturm should be building this many of them. I'm noticing in general that this person often buys things before the end of his turn. I think that's a bad habit. So I see him walk the artillery into the woods. I know exactly where it is now. And he begins his attack, but he doesn't really focus fire. He spreads his attacks out. I think that was kind of a misstep. He could have ignored the guy in the missile silo and just attacked the capturers with focus fire. In the northwest, he does call my bluff and attack me with that recon. I don't have a tank over there, so he gets a free hit. Not ideal for me. So he has a couple turns there where he can go unopposed. He keeps a lot of his guys in reserve in the middle. He doesn't attack with everything. I don't think that half committing to an attack is great, unless you reveal something in the middle of the attack that makes the whole thing a bad idea. But come to think of it, I don't think he was really trying to do a big attack here. I think what he was trying to do was just give cover to his artillery for it to advance, and then it can push me off of the cities pretty easily from there. That is probably pretty smart. But with his battlecopter, he makes a big mistake. He had a chance to get a free half tank on a previous turn. On that turn, he apparently decided that the risk was too great of losing his battlecopter. But the danger can only be growing. Every turn means I've had more time to bring up anti-aircraft guns. And it's not like he hit his battlecopter and had it pop up somewhere else unexpected. I've seen it every single turn. I know exactly where it is. If he calculated that it was not worth attacking before, it's definitely not worth attacking now. Okay. So, on my turn, I get some captures done. I'm happy to get that one. I didn't expect to get it so easily. I thought I'd probably get one center city after a lot of fighting. I do finish off his recon and drop off my infantry there with a T-copter for the maximum possible comm tower turn. I really want to benefit from as many turns as possible where I have a comm tower and he doesn't. This recon will die anyway, so I walk over there to see what he built and see, oh, he just built an infantry. Well, that's interesting. That probably means he built something expensive down there, like an MD tank or a tank. Over there, I get to take out his B-copter, and I'm pretty sure that it's free to do so for the time being. Probably next turn he'll drop off a tank or MD tank to that force, and I need to be cautious after that. Get some captures done. Because I'm not Sturm, I can't do that super fast, airport to this city chain, but it's okay. Load the MD tank on. Artillery forward. I've kind of done my job down here. I've interrupted his captures, I've secured my own, so my tanks can kind of shift back toward the middle over here where they can support this wall. I need to concentrate enough forces there to counter his. I think one thing I did a little bit better than my opponent in this game was be more mobile with my units. He concentrates a lot of people in the center and doesn't really move them around that much. I kind of sent little raiding parties back and forth from the center to either of the flanks, working in whatever area was most important. Alright, it's time for a clever maneuver here. I'm going to use my CO power. First of all, I do want to wipe out his gauge, which is getting pretty close to his CO power. I can't have him wrecking my army with a meteor right now. Number 2, unlike with the previous attacks that I did this turn, I could benefit a lot from having plus 10% attack and defense for the rest of the fights that I have in mind. And number 3, the attacks that I'm about to do won't really build up his bar very much. And so it's not like I'm wasting a lot of production that I could have done by using my CO power now instead of after doing those attacks. Now I thought very carefully about this maneuver and what I knew he had and what I knew he didn't have. Ultimately, I was able to come up with a plan to take the northwest city pretty much guaranteed. At the same time, I can cripple his artillery and force him to take some not cost-effective engagements while I bring up more reinforcements. So, like I mentioned, my troops from the northwestern area can do a little raiding party into the center before moving back. Killing that guy opens up a spot from which I can reveal his artillery that's hidden in the forest right now. Now my anti-aircraft gun can shoot his infantry like a North Korean defense minister. Like I predicted when I built the thing, anti-airs are really useful for wall breaking against Sturm. So his wall is down, I can now reveal his artillery, and now I can drive up the tank and attack him. His whole series of maneuvers to get it slowly into position have just been ruined. If his artillery stands and shoots, it can do some damage to either my capturing infantry or my anti-aircraft gun, but not that much. Then he can only attack my tank with one of his, which is not going to be that great for him. If he pulls back the artillery, he can have 2 tanks attack mine, which will hurt quite badly, but I think losing most of a tank for all of these gains is pretty well worth it. And no matter what he does, he can't really stop me from getting the city. I'll just keep moving a few more units around to shore up my defenses and make sure he can't break through on any side. It's especially tricky against Sturm because his super fast recons are a big threat. I drop off my MD tank in the north where it can protect all of my infantry and prevent him from capturing any cities. Well, unless he has a ton of infantry ready to start multiple captures at once. And I'll pull everyone else back into the woods so that they can't take too much more damage before the MD tank is ready to come up and help them. I build my first bomber here. I'm anticipating he'll start building heavy tanks of his own once he sees mine for one thing. Also, I'm pretty sure he has at most 1 anti-air and possibly 0. And I know he has a ton of tanks, and he has some artillery and things like that, and he might well build an MD tank of his own. In fact, it's highly possible he built one last turn. So for that reason, I thought it'd make sense for me to get a bomber out and just be able to push him off this side of the map with that bomber, or just safeguard in the middle. And the good thing about a bomber is because they're so fast, they can threaten to do both at once. A bomber in the right position can cover both my troops in the southeast and in the middle and attack anything that I need to on either side. Alright, his turn. He's in yet another no-win situation in the center here. He can attack me with a lot of vehicles and get some good damage, but I'll get the cities. And I already have some reinforcements in place, so he's unlikely to even break even if he tries that. And with me having a money advantage and a terrain advantage, my position is getting stronger and stronger with time, and his is not. But on the other hand, he has to do something, because otherwise I'm ahead in economy forever. He also doesn't really know how good my wall is. He can't see much of what's behind the front line. But I think he's kind of realizing that he's in a bit of trouble here. So his B-copter flies that way. He does finish off my recon. He gets a T-copter, but he has no infantry ready for it, so he wasn't as well prepared as I was, so he won't get that comp tower for a few more turns, really. He does start capturing one city in the northwest, but I can interrupt that easily. I'm not sure what he's really trying to do in the middle. He pulls the artillery back, which would make sense if he wanted to swarm my tank with his tanks, but he doesn't do that. Maybe he thought he could break through the wall if he double-teamed the infantry, but I made sure that was not the case by using my CO power for that extra defense. That's one of the main reasons I use that CO power, just to guarantee that he could not break through like that. Let's see what the damage calculator says, in fact. He doesn't do 60-30 damage, that's not right at all. Complete nonsense. Okay, there we go. So best case scenario, he reduces me to 6 HP, and if he attacks again, he still doesn't really get through. Whereas if I didn't have my CO power, he could do 6 HP of damage to me, and then if he could do 53 with like a tank or something like that, he could easily get through. So, wouldn't work double infantry, but would work with like tank infantry. So I had to use the CO power to wall him out, but with the CO power, he can't get through. He makes a bit of a misstep in the northwest and gets himself trapped on the infantry whom he knew was in that forest if he'd been watching the replay. And this is great news for me, because now instead of being able to attack only a recon with an MD tank, which is kind of a waste, I can attack an actual tank with it. Ultimately, he did another sort of half-committed attack, where he didn't risk many vehicles, but he also didn't really accomplish very much. That's a good outcome for me. The status quo is now in my favor. He does go ahead and build his own MD tank, which is great, because I already have the counter for it, so I anticipated that pretty well. So, I've got it. I get that middle city, and that is fantastic. I'll get started on the comm tower too. And I know he can't get his until minimum turn 15, so we'll have a few turns where I have the advantage and he doesn't. My captures this turn put me at 25 cities out of 50 total on the map. I know that this one and this one are neutral, and he's just starting to capture this one now. Therefore, he has at most 22 cities, so I'm at an advantage income-wise. I think though that some people exaggerate the importance of income advantages to winning matches. An income advantage can be outweighed by, for example, a unit count advantage, a unit countering advantage, a stronger enemy CO advantage, a superpower advantage, an intel advantage in Fog of War, lots of things. But for the time being, my strategy is working perfectly. I fly my B-copter northwest, away from where his B-copters and any possible secret anti-airs could be. I get a great surprise hit in this tank, ruining it with his MD tank. From a force, I take almost no damage. I am taking some risk with my anti-aircraft gun over here, I know. But I know where his battlecopters are accounted for, and I have anti-aircraft guns in the middle, so I don't need them over here. And at least can't attack him from good terrain. And I can pull this tank over there, so if he has like a tank to attack me, I can counter it, basically. And just keep interrupting his captures of that city, of course. Pull back for repairs. I do a lot of repairs. I keep all my units alive, pretty much. I think I lost one infantry so far, and that's about it. He's done a lot of damage to me, but he's hardly gotten any kills at all so far, which is giving me a good unit count advantage. In contrast, I've killed a good number of his infantry. T-Copters does some drops while it's waiting to be able to pick up this guy again. Advance the bomber. So in this position, if I kill the infantry, it can attack all the way over to here and hit anybody who's there or there. It can also hit everything in the center, so it's a pretty good coverage spot for it, and it's also hard for him to scout. If he attacks from like here with a recon, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, can't see me. So it is highly unlikely he gets to reveal this bomber, and I can surprise him either in the middle or on the right side. Okay, I need vision on the left, and I've got this infantry coming into the middle, not infantry, recon coming into the middle there. You know, one person who I saw look at this replay critiqued me for getting the lander off of the HQ, saying that it reduced my HQ defenses and so forth. And that's true, but it's also a crucial part of this wall here. This shoal would be a weak spot in any wall where he could just instant kill units here pretty easily. But a lander is almost invincible. So this creates like a really, really nice wall, where it's like HQ, which is fantastic defense, lander, which is invincible, city, great defense, missile silo, great defense, city, great defense. Planes are pretty weak, admittedly, but if I build a vertical wall there instead of diagonal, vertical and horizontal are much stronger in this game. It's really easy to get cost-effective engagements when you can use just a few cheap units to wall off the enemy. That setup, point 3 of my strategy, has been helping a lot here. He's been forced to concentrate almost everything that he has near the middle, but these infantry hold him off. I do have to station a tank on that city this turn. I thought pretty hard about this. If I had an infantry over there, he could too easily swarm it from 3 sides and kill it and then break through the wall. If I put a tank on there instead, he can break through with 3 tanks, but then there's nothing else really left to charge through the wall and attack me with. So he'd be leaving a lot of tanks exposed for basically no gain if he tried that. The presence of his recon does require me to reshape my wall a fair amount to keep it from zooming around with its crazy 8 movement. It's because of that I can't do something like put an infantry here and a tank here, for example. Because his recon can go so far, it can actually run in the loop around the entire wall and hit my artillery in that case. So for this one turn, I need to build this other oblique wall, basically. But with my bomber, with my artillery, with my battlecopters, I have enough covers that he'll suffer badly if he comes in here and tries to attack me now. So, it's not worth it for him. In fact, I'm kind of hoping he does it. He does a triple tank attack here, and then I'll just artillery him, bomber him, double tank counterattack him. So again, I'm trying to keep him in no-win scenarios, where if he attacks, he takes catastrophic damage for almost no gains, and if he does not attack, I just continue to grow ahead of him on income. I think in the northwest I need an anti-aircraft gun. Especially now that he's seen my MB tank. It's too close to his airport. And more artillery will be great for either shoring up my wall or pushing him off of his HQ and going for a capture on that. And with this northwest infantry, I'm hoping to limit where his air units can stay hidden while they move around. His mountain vision will help me see them coming. I really don't want to get surprised by a bomber or something like that. Okay, so I'm pretty well ahead of him on unit value. I know at this point that I've out-captured him, and I've won pretty much every single skirmish so far. So he and I both know that he has only a few turns to turn this around. If I don't make a mistake, and he doesn't find some way to break through, I'm going to win. He does get some captures, but I'm threatening to capture his stuff, like over here. I'm threatening to capture this thing. I'm going to for sure interrupt this, the way things currently stand. His MD tank is slowly going to the northwest, but for the time being, he's helpless. I don't know that, of course. And he's not going to get his comm tower for a long time, which really hurts his chances to make a push now when he needs to. He does drop off a tank in the southwest, and I think the infantry that I can see might be bait. But I've been expecting a tank there for a long time. He does finally build an anti-aircraft gun, which I think is a good idea. He hasn't seen my bomber yet, he's only seen one battlecopter, but it's smart to build one now before a plane is blasting him away. So here he shuffles some units around and threatens my tank with his mech, which has finally arrived. That's a pretty good move, I think. I will need to move the tank off of that city now. It may be cost effective for me to take a hit from a tank while I'm on that city, but not from a mech. And I can't just walk up and attack his mech because he's on an HQ, and a Sturm mech on an HQ is nearly invincible. But luckily, I've had time to bring up some reinforcements, so I can reorder my wall and make it better. Every turn I thought pretty carefully about what units I have now and how I can rearrange the wall to use them most efficiently. Grab as much land as I can, while keeping my wall as tough as possible. I've got my comm tower now, and it was tempting to try to make use of this for a few turns and just get a lot of attacks in before he captures his. Ultimately, I chose to play defensively though. In hindsight, I could have gotten some free kills, but I didn't know they would be free at the time. And the thing is, I don't really need to take risks anymore. I'm winning now. I know that I'm already ahead of him on income, and I'm going to take this city from him too unless he gets pretty clever to defend it, so I can sit tight. As long as I don't take any foolish risks, I am on track to win. He needs to go on the offensive to turn things around. In the northwest, things seem to be safe for now, but this could just be the eye of the Sturm before a bunch of air units swoop in, for example. Okay, so I take the safe engagement there, and then I just wall from my MD tank, and scout with that recon. So I've got good vision across things here. I know what's coming, between the mountain and the recon. Stop him there so he can't interrupt me. Capture that thing. That anti-aircraft gun has been so effective. It shot down like a B-copter, it's been shooting infantry, it's been fantastic. I'll get some more repairs. In the southeast, I've been expecting an MD tank to come out of the fog for several turns now. I have a bomber and B-cup ready to deal with it if it happens. And if it doesn't happen, they can reinforce the center. Continue to interrupt his capture there, finish him off again, he's just set back to square one on that. And I reshape my wall into whatever the best shape is for the turn at hand. Just making it so it's impossible for him to cost-effectively break through, and if he does break through, he'll just end up taking terrible casualties. Okay, Teacup's ready to pick up that guy and put another MD tank, because I'm thinking, again, I haven't seen many artillery from him, so he hasn't built the counters. I've taken out his battlecopters already, or at least one of them already, and one of them I can see, and I've got anti-air everywhere. So I think an MD tank is a decent counter for whatever he might build, and help me shore up the middle here and just threaten to push through any walls that he sets up. So I can just push back against any artillery that he brings in. Alright, his turn. And I'm wondering at this point, when will his nerve break? When will he decide that he has to attack even though it looks bad? The status quo is him slowly losing. I don't want it to sit forever though. He'll eventually get his meteor or bring up a bunch of rockets. Instead I want to build up and then go for a push on his HQ. As you can see, he's laid on his comm tower, a turn later than I thought he would be even. Here he reveals his MD tank. I thought it might be bait, but it's actually not. He's just revealing it for no reason. So he took a very big risk there, but he got away with it. He does shoot my anti-aircraft gun there, but he's Sturm and I'm on good terrain, so it really doesn't hurt very much at all. Once again, he sends infantry to their death trying to capture that uncapturable city over there. I've got too many vehicles there, and it's on my side of the map at this point. One pattern you may have noticed is that I'm often able to use my infantry to interrupt his captures, whereas he's forced to use vehicles to try to stop mine. And he also had to, for example, give up this city over here forever by attacking the anti-aircraft gun instead of attacking my capturing infantry. All of that is because he lost too many infantry of his own, whereas I kept mine alive. He shifts his mech around again, but I see it, so once again it's not going to be much of a problem for me. And here, to my chagrin, he gets quite lucky and happens to drive his recon deep into my lines and just barely spot my hidden bomber. On the one hand, good scouting. On the other hand, it's a bit frustrating to have been carefully keeping it secret and then have it suddenly revealed by a recon charging into my back lines. Notice though that he already built units for this turn, which I think is a mistake. You should always build units last for this exact reason. You never know what you'll discover you need during your turn. So although I don't know it, he can't build a counter this turn. He can't build any anti-airs or anything like that. He does have a rocket, which I've been expecting him to build for a while because Sturm rockets are insanely good with their ability to move full speed through plains and woods. It's a pretty good tool for breaking a big wall like I've built up in the middle here, so I think building it was a good choice. My hope has been to build up a winning force before he can break the stalemate with rockets. Speaking of which, I'm now stealing one of his cities. So now I know that he has 22 cities to my 27 and one is neutral. So I have a big income lead already, and I'm also threatening to capture this city, and eventually this one too. So income-wise, I'm running over on this side of the map. I'm holding the line there, I'm holding the line there. That's all I need. It's on him to go on the offensive against my fortified positions, which is how I want things to be. I try to use the trick of loading and unloading in the same turn to get free movement out of my transports. My MD tank kind of hedges its bets here. It doesn't drive full speed ahead, it also doesn't go onto the lander, it kind of moves to a position where it can either go back to the lander or go ahead at almost full speed. Alright. So take out his recon, I damage his tank pretty well, so another turn where I get all the good engagements basically. He sacrificed a tank for almost nothing. I use my infantry to interrupt that capture. With my bomber, the element of surprise is lost, but now I've blinded him again. So I'm going to cruise it up toward the northwest section where I know he has the MD tank and where he probably won't expect to see me. Battlecopter stays here to protect my tank from potential MD tank threats. I hoped for a better luck roll there, I didn't get it, but the important thing is just to be able to keep inching closer to his HQ, and I can now threaten to shell it with my artillery. I bring in more artillery, which are about to be obsoleted by his rockets unfortunately, but they'll be great for the next few turns until the rocket is in range. We're really seeing how much Sturm reshapes the game just by being Sturm. Both of us are able to wall up in a way that would not work with normal COs. I shuffle units around in the northwest, consolidating things and putting the MD tank on a city where it'll heal up its chip damage that it took for free. Besides that, free healing is now threatening things in the center as well as things in the northwest. Again, throughout this mission I've been trying to keep my units in mutually supporting positions, but not just ball them up where they can't control much territory. At the present time, he's a bit more spread out than I am. A lot of his troops don't cover each other. That is a change though. He spent a lot of the mission with all of his troops more or less bunched up in one place. I've heard a lot of Fog of War players talk about building what they call a death ball of units all clustered together in Fog of War. I'm not convinced that's always optimal though. I think it'd be better to have a somewhat more spread out formation that is still mutually supporting, most of the time. Anyway, this is the fateful turn where Trix decides he must attack. He does get a few good attacks on my infantry with his infantry, which does hurt a little bit, but won't change anything. He moves that tank over to a city where I can see it. I'm not sure that was a good idea, but we could have had it repaired up on a city that I can't see, like this one. I'm still anticipating an MD tank on the southeast, but he's only dropping off infantry, so really no big deal. I saw the mech go into the woods, so once again it's really not going to be a surprise. And at long last, he attacks the wall. He had to do it sooner or later. He does wall break me with his own anti-air. And he does therefore get to attack my artillery, but guess what? I've got 2 more waiting. It was a trap. They were covering it. So he immediately sees that he's about to take a nasty hit there. So at this point, I think he decides to cut his losses and just shift to walling off his HQ instead, because he realizes that sending more people into that meat grinder is not going to work out well for him. So, shifting over to try to protect his HQ instead, but a lot of units are still exposed. He doesn't have enough guys to wall up his own artillery anymore. He does continue attacking in the northwest, but he's just going to sacrifice his MD tank there. It drove up and now it's totally exposed. So this turn was catastrophic for him, basically. He took out a couple infantry. He took out, half an artillery, but he's going to lose so much stuff. He had to attack. He did attack, and it did not work well for him. I'd assumed that the reason he attacked this turn was that he just captured his comm tower or something, but that wasn't even true. He just must have felt too much pressure and felt like he had to attack now or whatever. But I think I'd already put him in an impossible predicament by this point. Maybe someone else out there could spot a way that he could have won that I'm just not thinking of. So, it is now my turn, and this is it. If I can wreck him this turn without overextending and getting punished for it, I'll clinch the game. I also, of course, need to deny him access to his superpower. I've won every single engagement up until now. I know I'm well ahead on income, so if I just get this right and don't leave myself open to a counterattack, it's game over. So first of all, I'm going to try to use my CO power in the best possible way. I want to take the engagements that don't benefit from CO power bonuses first, to fill up his gates so I can reduce it more. I also do some scouting over here to make sure the MD tank is indeed unguarded as it appears. Sure enough it is, no bombers, and oh hey, there's a rocket, interesting. So it is safe for me to attack this battlecopter, and I don't need my CO power bonus to do that in one shot, so I go for it. I go for more fights, which will give him a lot of CO power gauge for me to drain, and which I don't need the 10% bonuses for. This MD tank has been great. With almost exactly 30,000 in funds here, I can reduce his CO power gauge by 6 out of its 10 total blocks. So I'm going to try to get him to that point, and then use my CO power. I was silly with the infantry on the left front there, because at the time I moved it, I've been planning on protecting it, but then I decided not to do so, so it's now left exposed. Basically, I decided to put my other MD tank in the center instead of over on that side where I'd originally been planning to drop it off. I really don't think it's a good idea to try to push hard in this northwest front toward his airport without about 2 anti-airs, an A-air and a spare if you will. Back in the middle, I get a great hit on his artillery with my recon. I use the bomber to finish off a tank while keeping it safe from any kind of retaliation that he might have with anti-aircraft guns. And that puts him exactly above 6 tick marks, so this is the perfect time to use Market Crash, and then benefit from the 10% bonuses for the rest of the turn. In the northwest, I'll win this slow infantry fight because of repairs. He would need to bring up an air unit to break that stalemate, and I can bring up an anti-aircraft gun to kill that pretty easily. I attack with an infantry both to interrupt his capture and to reveal his mech, which I knew was hiding in that forest. Interrupt that too. I let him think that I don't have another anti-air done here. I built that one last turn because I knew that I was exposing this anti-air to danger, so before it even took damage, I was building a replacement for it, basically. Same thing with this recon. I know I sent it into danger, so I'm going to build a replacement this turn, to minimize the amount of time where I've left reconless on that side. I joined 2 infantry up in this spot because I know that next turn I can walk here, and then I can cross the mountains and start capturing his island city. I think it's my most efficient approach to steal that city out from under him. Back in the middle, I continue to wall for the bomber and take shots at him that he can't really counter. I finish that thing off, get great shots on his mech with my infantry. It's really cost effective to use infantry to take down mechs like that. I do reveal my anti-aircraft gun here, covering everything. I think it's okay to reveal it at this point on good terrain. This Neo-tank was meant to counter things like MD tanks, or to break through walls. The thought of using a 22,000 gold Neo-tank to kill an infantry is horrifying, but it could still be worth it if it's the only way to get through a wall, which it could be. Even bombers can't instantly kill Sturm infantry on planes. I think it was Prime Minister Baldwin in the lead up to World War II who warned that the bomber will always get through. Well, Baldwin should have thought of advising Parliament to play as Sturm. When you're Sturm, the bomber will never get through. Even a Neo tank needs a 20% attack bonus to guarantee killing a single infantry on a plane. That's crazy, isn't it? My T-copters are ferrying more infantry closer to his HQ. I might need backup to complete the capture, we'll see. Because I just took out one anti-aircraft gun in this area, I'm pretty confident he won't have another one, and therefore this is a safe attack. Turns out he has no more at all, but I don't know that. I'm getting a bit greedy here with these infantry, but the main thing I'm threatening to do is to capture his other HQ too. I want to give him too many threats to respond to with his small number of units. I had been hoping for some good luck against this tank to let me take it out and attack his artillery too, but it was not to be. The infantry that I moved up aggressively also do double duty of helping cover this tank that's going to attack his tank on the city. The one that turned invisible for some reason. Amazing new black hole invisibility technology. I am vulnerable to his artillery, of course, but it already has some good targets available, so might as well give it more than one. Don't need to pick one. And because I was able to scout his rocket, I know that it can't hit anything important, so that's good for me. I'm going to build another bomber because I took out his anti-aircraft gun. When you've killed an enemy counter unit, that's a great time to build the thing that it counters. And I'd also love to try to force him to build out a fighter to counter my bombers. With me being so far ahead of him on economy, and me having anti-airs already ready to kill such a fighter, that's really not an arms race which he can afford to get into, so I want to make him do it. If they were allowed on this map, I would be building those stupid stealth units for this exact reason. Good riddance to them, though. Before doing this attack, I calculated out how much of his CO power gates he could fill up with his remaining units. Unless he sacrifices his MD tank and just about everything else, I know he can't do it. That is his last chance to get one of those meteors and use it to pulverize the Eiffel Towers that criticize his government. Anyway, he does get a few okay attacks this turn, but nothing really substantial. He throws away another battlecopter attacking an infantry. He's lost so many battlecopters this game. I could finish off his MD tank with mine, but I'm not going to take that risk because he could have built a bomber or something like that out of sight. I don't really need to push him any further in that front. If he builds a bomber, in fact, good. That means he's not building something near his HQ. In fact, he's mostly just building small units and replacing his anti-aircraft gun loss this turn. So I have a major unit quantity and quality advantage at this time. I just need to use that to get his HQ successfully. Theoretically, I could even skip all the fights that aren't near the HQ. If you deduct out the values of our two landers, I think I have about double his unit value at this point. Neither of us knows that, of course, but he's surely feeling overwhelmed. Every single round of the game, the fighting has favored me. I've come out ahead. Well, I'm going to use this AA gun on more infantry. I've got a spare ready to cover me, so it should be just fine. To any anti-air doubters out there, every single one that I built has more than paid for itself. Of course, the mere fact that it worked out does not mean it was necessarily a good idea. At this point, he's getting pretty close to his CO power again, so I'll just use mine and wipe it all out. I didn't have quite as much money this time, so this is the best that I could do. I'm pretty proud of how I used my CO power this mission. I think it was quite optimal. It's a somewhat tricky power, which I've seen a lot of people get wrong. It was really crucial for this win. Even the 10% bonus has made a big difference. Alright, time to move in for his HQ. So here I start shelling his HQ infantry with my artillery. It's fired a lot, it's running out of ammo, so that's a good sign. Take out that infantry. I am still threatening captures just in case this HQ thing doesn't work out. Sturm's guy in his HQ is so tough. And artillery plus a bomber couldn't take down that infantry. Well, I'll finish it off with something else and then start establishing walls around his HQ. With what I know that he has or what he could possibly have built, I know that the walls that I'm building are unbreakable. So as I move in, I just start surrounding his HQ with units that he can't fight well. Take out a lot of his units for free pretty much. Hypothetically, if he had the right stuff hidden around here, he could slow me down, but it's unlikely. Wasn't optimal with that MD tank on the lander, but oh well. 2 T-copters, the new meta, and I'll build my own preemptive fighter just in case. And that's about it for me. So, Sturm takes a look from his HQ, sees that he's surrounded, and resigns. A pretty fast win for this map from what I've seen. A lot of the games seem to take about 30 turns or so. Well, definitely an uphill battle against a stronger CO and a much more experienced opponent. But I played all out here. My strategy and my intel handling both worked very well. It felt pretty tense to me until the last few turns, but it actually was pretty one-sided looking at the numbers now. It looks like if you compare our kills and deduct out the freebie recon and black boat, I've got a roughly 10-to-1 kill-death ratio. A pretty good debut into the Global League, I think. That said, I am certainly still a new player with a lot to learn. I have no illusions about that. I would certainly value any advice or suggestions about how to improve my game. I did have fun with this and probably will play more Global League games in the future when I have time. Hopefully, I never run into somebody who watches these videos and therefore knows all my tricks. In any case, I hope you enjoyed that video of my first foray into the Global League. Have a great day, everyone.